the simplest type of business there is. If you're doing it with like all of your blood, sweat, tears, and soul, you as a person will evolve into a whole new person every 2 or 3 years. You will grow, you will learn skills, you will learn management, you will learn leadership, you will learn all sorts of virtues that you've never been exposed to before in your life, because the marketplace, the business is requiring you to level up.
Hey, Bryan, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Sam, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on, man.
Most certainly. Well, obviously, I got to know a little bit about you by doing my own little research. You have a very successful entrepreneurial journey. Started your career way early in your teenage years. You started to do lawn care on the side while you were still in school, started to make some money. And when you got out of high school, you went on to really grow that company into a $10 million lawn care business in the state you grew up in. And then you had a successful exit. You sold that company in 2013, I believe, and then went on to start this new venture that you're running, which is the two-sided marketplace for lawn care providers to meet homeowners and a place for homeowners to find a trusted landscaping businesses to help them with their lawn care services. And you've built that company now into almost $30 million or more in annual sales, and you're continuing to grow, and you're enjoying the entrepreneurial life of living anywhere you want without having to be tied to a desk and sit in an office, 9 to 5 every day. So time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. You've clearly have done it in your career. Super excited to have you here. But I'm sure those things didn't come natural and easy, and every entrepreneur has some struggles that they had to overcome to get there. So can you share with our audience a little bit about that entrepreneurial journey and how you got started?
Yeah, great intro. Thanks for that. Like you said, I'd love to tell you I was a born entrepreneur, that like I was just naturally like inclined to go start a business, but the reality is I was forced into it. I think my dad got tired of watching me play Super Mario Kart all day, and he busted into my room one day and he said, "Hey, get off your butt. I talked to the neighbor and I have negotiated for you to go mow their yard for $20. And my dad was a military guy, so this was like not a democratic household. It was a direct order. And he made me go cut the neighbor's grass. And luckily he did that, because I remember I got paid $20 for like 40 minutes of work. And back in 1995, that was a lot of money. And I thought, this is awesome. I just made more in an hour than I could in a week with my allowance. I thought, I'm just going to do this. And I made up some flyers, passed them all over the neighborhood, and got 20 customers that first summer. And I never looked back. Every year I just grew that little lawn mowing business just a little at a time, almost working it like a video game, really, looking back. And in over a 15-year period of time, built it into a real business, 150 employees and a sales team and managers and things like that. And around $10 million a year in revenue is what we're able to grow it to. And then it was acquired. It was acquired by a national company in 2013. You wouldn't think there's national landscaping businesses, but there are. And this one had like 2,000 employees. Bought my business. And then after that, I took some time off, got bored, thought, well, what am I going to do with my life now? I want a new challenge. I want a new project. I realized that I needed that in my life. And so I had this idea that there should be an app where you just push a button and somebody should come take care of your lawn mowing for you. And the idea was simple, but I didn't really understand how hard it was going to be to execute. And that was a good thing. It was kind of naivete as an asset. But recruited 2 co-founders. We started working on the idea for GreenPal. And now GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success. We are nationwide in the United States, around 300,000 people using the app and doing multiple 8 figures a year in revenue. So it's 22 years and really in one industry, on the blue collar side and now on the tech side.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a crazy shift, right? I mean, you had one option, which is to continue to grow the company that you built to maybe 30 million by just keep hiring more lawnmower, right? Buying more lawnmowers and getting more people to actually cut the grass. But instead you decided to go build something that actually could scale infinitely if you really wanted to, right? And you could even take the concept elsewhere in the world. So how did you think that there was a need for a product like this? Where did you think that was an opportunity?
It's a great question. I think when you are starting a new piece of technology, authenticity can be a competitive advantage. If you are solving your own problem, you can kind of start on first or second base. And that's kind of how it was for me. I really was just solving my own problem. I saw this problem manifest itself every day running my landscaping company. Matter of fact, as we grew that company to 50, 75, 100 people, we no longer did basic residential services. Well, we did mainly commercial contracts, $50,000, $100,000 contracts. And we didn't do $35 lawn mowings anymore. But because we had, 80, 90 trucks going out every day all over Nashville, Tennessee, people in the residential space thought that we still did residential work. And so they would call us every day at our office. And so every day we would field 60, 70 phone calls a day. People saying, "Hey, I saw your truck with a bunch of lawnmowers on it. Will you come take care of my lawn for me?" And we'd have to politely decline. We had a value running that business. No matter what, always try to be helpful. Just try to solve somebody's problem if you can. So we would keep a list of names and phone numbers of smaller lawn care providers by the phone, and we would refer those names out, and we would say, "No, but we don't do that anymore, but here's 5 people that do." And what would always happen is, like, those people would say, they would call us back like the next day, and they say, "Hey, I called all those people. I left a bunch of voicemails, and like one guy was supposed to come out. He stood me up. This other guy you recommended never would give me a quote. I left voicemails for the rest of them. What gives? Do you have any others?" And so here we are. It's kind of like no good deed goes unpunished. And so it's like now we're stuck in the middle trying to help these people and these providers. And so I saw this every day, like how just hard it was for people to get this chore done, and then what like a disorganized chaos it was for the smaller operators to run their business. And I thought, well, somebody's going to build a platform to make all this run smoothly, like Uber was doing at the time for ride sharing. I thought, well, why couldn't it be me? Why can't I build a team and do this? And that was the idea. And now here we are 10 years later, and we're still working on the same idea. How do we make it cheaper, faster, smoother, safer, more reliable, more convenient to order a lawn mowing service? And then how do we make it more profitable, easier, less headache to run a lawn mowing business? We solve problems on both sides of the transaction.
I mean, it's kind of crazy what that story that described is also my story. I call so many of these guys, they all come in my neighborhood. And then when I'm not happy with my current guys, I call all those people off of their own trucks. And very rarely do I even get a call back. I mean, these guys are all in their field, don't have good technology to respond back on time. Most of them don't even have like a CRM system to track their leads or anything. It's a very horrible experience when it comes to contacting local lawn care providers. And then when they give you an estimates, it's very vague. And when they give you bills, even worse. And most of them don't still take credit cards. They all want checks. I'm like, how the heck are you guys going to ever scale? Right. It's a very completely a different way of looking at it. So obviously you built a service company, so you know the struggles of building a service company. It's not as scalable as most people would think, right? The only way to do is, you're trading hours for dollars. You keep hiring more people to scale that company, and the growth comes with exponential amount of capital expenditure as well, right? Because you need more equipment, so you also need more human capital as well. Whereas you decided to go build this marketplace, which technically is a SaaS or subscription made or like an online platform, can infinitely scale. So what were some of the commonalities that you saw in both business model, and are there any lessons from the service business that you were able to use to go build this company even better?
Yes, great question. To your point, you could call us a SaaS-enabled marketplace. So it's a marketplace that connects buyers and sellers, but on both sides of the transaction, there are SaaS tools to make it run smooth. So estimating tools, scheduling tools, routing tools, CRMs, all sorts of things. And so it's a SaaS-enabled marketplace. And there were many things. What the first thing is, in 2013, when we were first getting started, there was an avalanche of venture capital that was chasing these Uber for X ideas, Uber for home cleaning, Uber for laundry service, Uber for valet parking. And what most of them got wrong was they placed an overemphasis on the technology and like building the scalable technology infrastructure and using the venture capital to do that and to buy, basically Facebook ads and Google ads to grow. And they all fell short of the idea of, like, if you use the Uber for home cleaning, the customer doesn't care how good the app is or how well designed the app is. They care how clean their floor is. That is the product. The product is not the app. The product is not the marketplace. The product is not the slick design. It's not the emails. It's, did they get the mildew out of the grout in the kitchen, in the tub? And that's the product. The review you're going to get in the App Store is based on that and not the actual app itself. And so it's crazy, but most Uber for X companies lost sight of that. They just forgot that they were actually in the service business. And so that was one of the things that we were able to kind of sidestep that painful lesson, because I came from the services business and I was able to apply those lessons learned day one and really kind of start from a vendor-led, a supplier-led kind of perspective rather than a demand-led or a consumer-led. And
Hmm.
because I knew that if vendors didn't love using it, like weren't eager to use it, wouldn't quote when the free bid opportunities came down the pipe, wouldn't show up when they were supposed to, do a good job. If like we couldn't build something that would deliver that, then we didn't even have a product for homeowners to use to hire them off the shelf. And it's crazy, like a lot of platforms like took the Uber model where you don't really care who shows up to take you to the airport. And then, on the return trip, you don't care who takes you back to your home from the airport. Well, in the lawn mowing business, you do care. You want the same person every week. Like there's all this nuance that builds up about your property, and they know it, and they know what you like, and they know what day you want and all that. So we had to solve for that and preserve that relationship between supplier and homeowner. And so I was able to bring a lot of the experience to the starting block. Now, what cost us a lot of time was I'd never built a tech product. I didn't know how to code, didn't know how to write software, didn't know how to develop, I didn't know how to market software, didn't know how to distribute software, didn't know how to build a marketplace. And so I had to learn, my team and I had to learn all these things just through trial and error, YouTube University, online classes, boot camps, code academies, things of that sort. So that took a long time. That took like 3 years. And so it was probably 4 or 5 years before we had any real liquidity, any real traction, or even could pay ourselves a decent salary.
So it's kind of crazy that sometimes, when these founders start the companies, they're either a tech founder, right? They're just technology geeks who knows how to program, has, a good understanding of how applications work, and they can build that, but they don't understand the service or the business side of it, right? So they always need a co-founder who's that business mind that can actually, monetize the product or at least, commercialize it. Whereas you came from the service world, you knew how the business works. You just needed the other arm, which is, hey, how do you turn this into an actual product, and how you go build this into a scalable technology and then grow it. So obviously there are certainly some setbacks, right? Like you said, almost 3 years to get it to market and to produce some cash. So what are some setbacks, maybe even from your service business, that you've learned as a founder trying to build a company, or even in this SaaS-enabled marketplace business that you're building? What are some setbacks that you've experienced?
A lot of things that I learned in the first 15 years that I could apply to the second journey, particularly around hiring and team building. Many mistakes I made in building the first business was I would try to hire for skill set and not fit. And like I needed a salesperson, I would try to go hire like a rock star salesperson rather than taking the time to develop my sales process and then teaching a motivated individual that process. And so that simple lesson of like build your system, build your process, and then take a motivated person with a good work ethic to run that process. Don't look for these like rock star unicorns that don't exist most of the time you can just like delegate it to with no system or no standard operating procedure. So I made that mistake a lot in the first business, particularly around team building, hiring bad cultural fits, and then suffering them too long. A lot of mistakes I made around my personal development. I think every small business reaches like the choke point of the founder's development, like their growth and evolution alongside of the business most of the time. And so for me, there was a lot of like capping out where like my personal development was slowing. My leadership style, my management acumen, all of that stuff was not growing alongside the business, and so the business didn't grow. And so I was able to like not repeat those mistakes in the second company. But then there was a lot of things I had to learn from scratch. One thing in particular that caught me by surprise, I built the landscaping company to 150 people, 10 million a year in sales, and sold it in an industry where that doesn't happen very often. And so here I am, I got that done, and my chest is all puffed out, and I think I know everything there is to know about running a business. And then I start this tech company and I realized you don't know anything. Like that was child's play. You're in the NFL now. That was Pee Wee League. And I really, looking back, it's like, well, why? Why was that? Why was the second thing so much harder than the first? And the reason I think is because anytime you're starting a tech company, people think it's hard because of the technology is so mysterious. No, that's the easy part. The hard part is most of the time when you're starting a tech company, you're inventing a new product from scratch. And that is so much harder than running a landscaping business, a construction business, a restaurant, a home cleaning business, a coffee shop, whatever. When you're
Mhm.
running like a traditional a business, those are hard enough on a good day. But when you try to invent something brand new, a brand new product that nobody knows about, nobody knows to use, you don't know how to build it, you don't know what the journey is, what the steps to take. The only way to figure it out is just through trial and error. That's like 100 times harder. And I didn't know that. Nobody told me that.
Mhm.
And so I had to like grit my teeth through that on my own.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of lessons there. I mean, if I can go back to the first point that you made, which was, kind of hiring fast without really looking for the culture fit and whether or not this person is going to be a good long-term key player in the business, right? I've heard the concept of like the will versus the skill. A lot of people hire for the skill and then quickly realize this person doesn't have the will. But if you can hire for the will, and then you can teach the skill and that person could become a much better value added resource for the organization. And a lot of times, founders are in a hurry. They just want a skillful person that can fill the role and so they can move on to the next problem. I think that's just an important lesson that oftentimes you live and learn the hard way. The other couple of things that you mentioned, I think that this concept that you just explained about you're almost creating a category in the marketplace that never existed before, and you're having to create the demand for the product while you're building the product, which is a very hard thing to do. Whereas, in an established market, like in landscape and business, you can grow it by just doing, like you said, maybe you do Facebook ads or Google ads and just keep expanding your territory by just advertising more because people already are actively looking for a landscaping business. You just need to be the guy to get found, right? And you can do that much quicker. But you're trying to teach the people, hey, there's a concept called, you can go onto the web, order a landscaping company, they will give you a quote and they will come and show up and do the work. You don't have to go hunting for it because we pre-vetted these guys who are qualified and would guarantee to do a better job. But that you had to teach both the landscaping company why they would benefit from being on your platform. Meanwhile, you're also having to teach the homeowners why they should use you as opposed to just going and doing their own research online. So that's a completely different ball game. Yeah, so certainly can understand the importance. And I think unless people know this difficulty getting into it, right, and they may not stay in the game long enough and won't succeed. And I think the other thing you mentioned is the whole concept of humility, because a lot of times, the founders have this sense of, okay, I've accomplished it, I can do it again, I don't necessarily need any help. But I think you just need to know what you don't know could actually really hurt.
Exactly.
And even in some of the things you mentioned about the personal development. So if we can spend a little time, because obviously you had some personal revelation that, okay, I have to improve my skills, I have to step up my game. So what were some of the areas where you felt like you needed to invest into personal growth, and how did you identify that and what did you do to improve?
If you're running any business well, it could be a one person, you could be cleaning houses and have a helper.
Mm-hmm.
The simplest type of business there is. If you're doing it with like all of your blood, sweat, tears, and soul, you as a person will evolve into a whole new person every 2 or 3 years. You will
Mm-hmm.
grow, you will learn skills, you will learn management, you will learn leadership, you will learn all sorts of virtues that you've never been exposed to before in your life because the marketplace, the business is requiring you to level up and grow alongside the business. And if you're not, then that's probably the reason why the business is stalled out. Because as the business grows, you have to grow along with it and you have to evolve into a whole new person with it. And so pretty much in the last 22 years, I can look back at 2 or 3 year blocks of time where the business wasn't doing so well. And it's usually because I wasn't reading the books, I wasn't getting the coaching, I wasn't going to the conferences, I wasn't seeking out mentors, I wasn't seeking feedback and acting on it and like cognitively trying to get better. And it hit me one day, I think it was year 8 or 9 in my first company. I was driving to the office one morning at like 6 in the morning, and I had this pit knot in my stomach. I didn't want to go there. And I was like, God, this sucks. I wish I could just go back home. I don't want to, like, everybody that works for me is an asshole, and I really just don't want to go there. And I hate it. And then, like, I think it was right before I pulled into the parking lot, it hit me. I was like, you built this. Like, this is a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you literally, like, and then I started to realize as the founder, you get exactly the company culture you deserve. You get exactly the vibe, the enthusiasm, the appreciation from your people. You get exactly the level that you deserve because it's a reflection of you. And so if you're not enthusiastic, if you're not ambitious about the goals of the business, and you're not loving it and bringing the vibe to the office every day, then why would you expect your people to do that, to pick up that slack? And so that was a hard thing I had to learn and be honest with myself about. And I got
Hmm.
coaching, how to become a better leader. And I sought out feedback from my people, and realized that most of them actually viewed me as an asshole. And maybe
Mm.
I was a hard boss, but there was things I needed to improve on. And so that took like 2 years. And while I'm not like some guru today, I'm better than I was then. And I think if you constantly are leveling up alongside the business's growth, that's one of the funnest things about it. And if you're not growing into an indistinct, like into a whole new person every 2 or 3 years, that might be why the business isn't growing.
What were some of the key changes you've made in the organization to bring that culture to a level that you enjoyed showing up to work, and the other people also did the same?
I had to really care. Like, I had to really care about my people, where they were trying to get to in
Hmm.
life, and like every single one of them, and where the business fit along with that. And it could be like, maybe this person doesn't have like huge career advancement goals, but they do want to put a down payment on a house. Like, how does the business fit into that? Maybe this
Mm.
person wants to run their own business of this size one day, and they're here because they want to like get the skills to get there. How does the company fit into that? Maybe this
Hmm.
person is just trying to put a kid through college, and how do we fit into that? And like really trying to figure out, how does the business fit along with the life journey of the people that work there, and how do we help them get to where they're trying to go? And I mean, it even like at a tactical level, we would give interest-free loans to people who are trying to get a down payment for a home. We would help pay children's tuition in private schools because that was important to one family. We gave a free loan for college for another family one time. And like all of these like little things we did, all of them made good. We didn't lose money on any of this stuff. And so
Hmm.
and so I had to really first give a crap and care about my people, and like do it for a long time. And then it got to be a fun place to work. And then I was able to not make a lot of those mistakes with building the team on the second company.
Hmm. And I think, a couple of things you mentioned earlier about the leadership, like you reached a ceiling point that you couldn't grow past. And then that actually affected the company to grow. Because I think, especially as founders, we are, managers too a little bit, right? Because we get involved in the day to day. You're managing people, you're having to tell them what to do, and you're measuring what they've done instead of just casting the vision and giving the big dreams and then rally the people around and just say, hey, go do it, right? But you also had in the weeds of managing people, which is kind of like more draining than the leadership style, right? Like
Yep.
the actual leadership. So what's the distinction you make between that leader versus the manager, and which role do you tend to play today?
Yeah, you have to know the difference between the two. And ideally, in a perfect world, you could like double down on one or the other. But I find even still today, our team today is 40 something people, and I'm wearing one hat or the other. And the best way I can describe it is from the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And Dr.
Mhm.
Stephen Covey describes it as the manager is like leading a team of people chopping through the forest. And on the other side of the forest is where we're trying to get to. And the manager is making sure that
Mhm.
we are hitting our KPIs on how much forest we're chopping through, making sure we got the right process in place on sharpening our machetes, has tested all the different machetes and knows that, okay, we're getting these machetes from this vendor and so on, and is measuring the people who are performing well and promoting them and demoting and expelling the ones that aren't doing well, getting through the forest efficiently. And then the leader is the one that is the guy or gal that takes a big, tall ladder and leans it against one of the trees, climbs to the top, and yells, "Wrong forest." That's the difference between leadership and management. And I think, as a founder, particularly if you're in like the small to mid-size like me, I don't have thousands of employees, so I don't have a whole lot of managers of managers. I think at times you're going to be wearing your management hat, and at times you're going to be wearing your leadership hat, but you need to know the difference between the two and know when you're performing one role versus the other, and really which one you're better at maybe, but the odds are you're going to be doing both.
Yeah, and sometimes I think I tend to enjoy the leadership side more than the management
Yeah.
side, right? Because the people management is probably by far the least enjoyable role that I would say I have in life.
It's servitude.
Uh,
It really is servitude. You have to care. You gotta pump yourself up, and there's just no way to fake it. And there's no way to scale it. You got to get in there and roll your sleeves up. I don't particularly enjoy it either, but every time I've ever neglected it or ignored it, it's always the bill has come due at some point with interest.
Most certainly. Well, you actually successfully grew two companies. You had to have learned something about sales and marketing to be able to do that, and especially the second time around, like you said, you're trying to build this two-sided marketplace, which means you are selling to two people. One is the vendor side, trying to build a really trustworthy, reliable team, a group of vendors that are actually on the platform, leveraging the platform to get customers. And you're on the other side, you have to be feeding them with good customers. Otherwise, the vendors aren't going to be active on the platform. So how did you manage that fine balance? And how were you able to successfully get really good amount of demand for the vendors and also find the vendors to be active on the platform? What were some of the marketing and sales strategy that worked for you?
Yeah, it's challenge in any marketplace because you have this chicken and egg problem, and you can't market to one at the expense of the other. The way we did it was we kind of hand cranked one side and then tried to figure out a way to market to the other side. So the first 500 service providers that use GreenPal all had my cell number, and it was just like a lot of hand cranking. I would reach out to them personally. I'll say, hey, listen, I'm building this platform where you can run your business. It doesn't have all the features it needs now, but if you'll use it, I'll give you free coaching on how to run a lawn mowing business, how to grow a lawn mowing
Mhm.
business. And so that's how I was able to kind of get the glue of the first 100 to 500 service providers. And then that bought us a year or two to where we could really focus on how do we market to homeowners and get them to use the platform at scale. And the first, 1,000 homeowners we got by passing out flyers, literally. And then by way of doing that, we were able to test all these other marketing channels, and we landed on Google organic search, just flat out
Mhm.
lawn mowing service nearby me. How do we compete in that channel? And then we realized, man, like building this platform, building this app, recruiting the vendors, that was the easy part. The hard part is actually like getting the marketing and distribution in place so people discover it when they need it and sign up for it and use it. That's a lot harder than just building the damn thing. And the way I look at it is like, it'd be like if you wanted to be a rock star, but you didn't know how to play guitar or sing or write a song. And so you like spent all this time learning how to play guitar, getting vocal classes, learning songwriting, and you worked your ass off and poured your soul into cutting an album. And now you got an album with 12 songs. And you worked really hard for 2 or 3 years to develop the skills to do that, and now have this album. And then you go play a live show and nobody shows up. And then you realize the hard part is actually getting fans and people to care about this music. Like that's like 100 times harder than it was just to record the music. Well, that's like what starting a tech company is like, or really any new product. It's like the easy part is building the product. The easy part is a lot of the stuff that people think is the hard part. The hard part is actually distribution. There's a saying that first-time founders worry about product, second-time founders worry about distribution. Because the
Mhm.
second-time founder's been around the block, has the scars, they're like, product is table stakes. If we can't get this thing marketed in a way that people will find out about it at a cost-effective manner, we'll never take off. This thing will be dead on arrival. And so that's how it was for us. Like it was daunting the first 5 years, throwing everything we had into ranking for these phrases. But we picked up a little bit of steam, and little by little, the stuff began to compound. And it's not like we're dominating the world today, a decade in, but we get 4,000 or 5,000 people a day sign up who found us online.
Kind of like what you said, it's a 10-year overnight success.
That's right.
So, if you watch Shark Tank, any episode, you kind of see that pattern. They almost ask how many customers you have. They care very little about the product and how beautiful the product is. They just want to know how many people bought it,
That's right.
how much sales you had, right? Like
That's
that's
right.
their litmus test to see if this is actually going to have some traction once they invest some money into it. Because sometimes cash isn't the problem, right? The product just haven't had much success in getting customers. And so today you're not even in the States. You have a company that you built and is running in Nashville, Tennessee, with over entire United States have access to the platform. And people can order, like you said, over 5,000 people join every day and thousands of transactions happening per day, but you're not even anywhere near. And you're able to enjoy the entrepreneurial dream of time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. So how were you able to accomplish that? And what were some of the systems and processes you implemented to be able to remove yourself from the day-to-day as much as you were able to do today?
Yeah, these days I travel 9, 10, 11 months out of the year, different parts of the world. I really, 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 really love it. It makes me feel alive, and it really makes me feel more motivated to grow the business even more when you are exposed to new parts of the world and seeing different cultures and just different ways of life. It's just a lot of fun, and it really keeps me invigorated because we want to get to 1 million customers, and 100 million in revenue. And so, but I couldn't, people hit me up all the time, and friends are like, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, man, I sat in an office with no windows for 7 days a week for like 5 years trying to get
Mhm.
this company going. And so I don't know of any way you can skip that. I think you really got to grind to get the momentum going. And then once you start getting a little bit of traction, getting some money coming in, you can then wear the hat of like a capital allocator. Money comes in, and then you put money back to work to make more money. And it was probably year 5 or 6 that I was able to transition from being in the business every day to more on the business of, okay, now I'm studying the data. Now I'm understanding, okay, what are the people that we need to get on the bus that we don't have, and what does success look like in those roles? And a really simple book about this is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And what he talks about
Mhm.
in that book is creating an org chart for your business. And you might say, well, it's just me or me and a helper or me and 3 people. I don't need an org chart. Well, you kind of do, because you want to like visualize and externalize what that organization looks like. Who's the CEO, who's the COO, who's head of product, who's head of marketing, who's head of R&D, who's head of customer success, and then what are all the sub roles underneath that? And it might be like your name on most of these roles. But then as time goes on, you can peel your name off these roles and then assign them to
Mhm.
subcontractors or employees or freelancers. And then before you know it, if you're doing this right, you can build a real organization around you where you have roles and goals. So you not only have the role of what the head of search engine optimization looks like, but you have the goals associated with what success or failure looks like in that position. And if you do this little by little, and it's easy to get overwhelmed doing it, it's like, where do I even start? Just start at
Mhm.
one role at a time. It adds up, it compounds. And then you can get to a point where as the founder, as the CEO, you can really just focus on the high leverage things, the things that are important but not necessarily urgent. Those are the places where you can have the most impact, not just, trying to keep the lights on every day.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuggets there. Kind of like you said, people are, looking at your success today. They're like, "Oh, I want to be where you are." I heard recently John Maxwell saying something very similar. He said, someone told him like, "Oh, I want to be like you. I want to do what you do," and he said, "Well, can you do what I did to get to where I am today?" Which is like 40 years worth of just self development and research and learning and writing hundreds of books that are bestsellers, but that didn't happen overnight, right?
Exactly.
It's not right. There's a lot of, like you said, 7 years sitting in a no window room, chugging away to get to where you are. But I think the just that simple concept that you mentioned, which I think I've heard E-Myth, I've read that book, and I think I've been wanting to get Michael Gerber on the show. I haven't had the chance to do it, but essentially, that whole concept of the organization chart, which helps you to really visualize where are your weak spots,
Right.
and you as a leader can quickly realize, well, I'm not the best person to manage the marketing, or I'm not the best person to hire and train people. You will start to recognize your weak spots, and then you can quickly try to find a key player in that role that can replace you immediately. So that frees up your mind and your brain cells to focus on strategic things that only you could do, which is a very, very important part. And I like what you said, like, it might take you 5 years to get to a place where you can focus on more strategic work on the business activities versus like working in the business, right? Like that's the dream, right? Getting yourself out of the weeds to be able to look at the big picture and have strategic vision and figure out, well, how do I get these things to come to fruition? But clearly you've been able to do this all without raising capital, and you must have some sort of a conviction on why you wanted to do with your own money. So can you share a little bit about your perception on raising money and why you decided not to do it?
Yeah, for me, I think it was the right thing to do because I just knew that we needed to build a product that customers loved and not one that investors loved. And I knew that so long as we were making a little bit of money and we were able to grow that number, that everything else would be okay. I knew that we weren't in some kind of land grab, like an Uber and a Lyft battle. When Uber was getting rolling, there was like 5 other really well-funded competitors that they just stomped because they raised money as a super growth hormone, to outgrow them. We weren't in that kind of dynamic, and I knew it. And there were several other companies that were like Uber for lawn mowing, Uber for landscaping, that did raise a bunch of money, 10, 20, 50, some as many as $100 million, and they all crashed and burned except for like maybe 1 or 2 other ones. And the best I can tell, it was like they were trying to put rocket fuel into a Toyota Camry, that they just didn't have the systems, and they didn't haven't nailed yet. And then they tried to put a bunch of venture capital on it and it just blew apart. And I kept seeing this happen over and over again. And I thought, man, yeah, I've ran a $10 million business, but I've never had to spend $10 million in a year. And like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to screw that up. And like, this is my one good idea. I've had one good idea in a decade. And I guess that's made things very simple for me because I don't have this bright, shiny object syndrome. Like, I've got one good idea, push a button, somebody should come mow the yard for you. And I didn't want to screw it up. And I felt like raising capital was going to cause us to take our eye off the prize, which was making a product that customers liked. And so, yeah, that's why we didn't do it. And this thing kind of had to sing for its supper, right? Since day one. And that has caused us to do one thing: talk to our customers, figure out where we're pissing our customers off. Figuring out, like in the early days, we would call like, hey, we noticed you signed up for GreenPal and tried it one time, but you never used it again. Would you tell us why? Like, because not only because I need to know why, because I need to fix it, but also I need your business. like it was a very practical thing that kept us like as a course correction thing, not raising money. In a way, not raising money was the thing that got us where we are today. So it worked for us. I'm not anti-venture capital because in a weird way, like if you rolled up with Doc from Back to the Future and he says, jump in the DeLorean, we're going back to 2010 and you're going to do it all over again, the first thing I would do is raise money because I know every single little move to make and I can do it faster with a bunch of money. So it's a strange paradox. It was the right move for me as a founder at the time, my experience. But if I had to do it all over again, going back in time, I would have raised capital. So I don't know what the definitive answer is there, other than I have no regrets.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that the second time founders usually are easier to raise funds because they've already successfully proved they can do it, right?
Right.
And the investors are much more willing to give them money and take a risk on those guys. So clearly you had multiple successful business. You built a lot. You were able to enjoy the life that you want and wherever you want. What's the why? What's the motivation? What keeps your drive? What keeps you up and want to keep doing this?
Yeah, I think, you have to have some kind of like, if it wasn't for me, then what? Like if I didn't get out of bed in the morning, what would happen? And you have to have some kind of answer to that question. And for some people, it's their family. And, I'm not married. I don't have kids. Maybe I'm married to my business. Maybe I always have been. But for me, like if I don't get out of bed in the morning, why does it matter? The project, the business, the mission, the thousands of people that depend on the platform is the answer to that question. So it really does give me fulfillment. It really does put meaning into my life because there's 32,000 small business owners that depend on it to run their livelihood. And like, I take that very seriously. And it's very fulfilling when they let me know, they hit me up all the time. We have a Facebook group with 3,000 or 4,000 of them. And they're like, hey, because of GreenPal, I was able to buy a riding mower. And now you might think, what's the big deal? Buy a riding mower. Well, in the commercial landscaping business, a riding mower, like the commercial ones, are like 15 grand. And the day in the lawn mowing business where you go from pushing a damn mower every day to a Cadillac $15,000 riding lawnmower, it is a step up in life. It is a material improvement to your life experience because you no longer have like the back pain when you get home and you're able to make like 3 times the money with half the work. It's a big deal. And so like when you hear those stories, or I was able to put a kid through school, or I was able to buy a new truck, or I was able to get out of debt because GreenPal gave me a business in a box where all I had to do was work my butt off and serve my customers. That's a lot of fun. And so that's why we do it. That's the passion behind it. That's why I'm having fun doing it.
Awesome. Obviously, you have a lot of responsibility and you're having to work in completely different time zone. So you have to be very focused on how you get your stuff done. Are there any sort of productivity hacks that you have in terms of keeping you focused to get your strategic things done without any interruptions and getting it done in an efficient manner?
Yeah, for me, one thing that works for me is like I'm the hardest working, laziest guy you'll ever meet. And so it's like I have these moments of ambition maybe, or moments of drive. And so like when I catch myself in one of those like flow states, I will lay out a series of things that I call tripwires, which is like appointments that I schedule or people that I bring on fractionally or commitments that I make that are laid out like on a calendar. So it's like, okay, 2 weeks from now, you have to meet with this data scientist that makes $1,000 an hour. You better have all of your stuff together from now to that point, because I hate spreadsheets. I hate staring at data. I hate looking over just raw numbers and trying to make sense of it. I'm not good at it. And so I have people that help me with it, but I have to be held accountable when I meet with them on a weekly or every 2-week basis, and they make a lot of money. And so that's something that I do as a forcing function to keep me as the founder in check, to be working and operating at a high level. And I'll do the same for our content strategy. I'll do the same for, SEO audits, which I hate. I still do an hour a day of customer support personally, because at least an hour, sometimes maybe it's 2 to 3 hours, because I don't want there to be like this mysterious gap that forms between my logic and the customer's logic. And so doing customer support every day closes that gap. And so I think it's these forcing functions, what I call tripwires, and like laying them out, and just almost where like success is not failure is not an option. Success has to happen, because you have to do all of these things that you're eventually going to trip over if you don't. That works for me. And then like the book Atomic Habits talks about, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall back to the level of our habits. And the same thing is in business. We don't rise to the level of our business objectives or goals. We fall back to the level of our systems, our daily routines in the business. So constantly being mindful of that is something that helps me.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about Atomic Habits, the Habit book, when you were actually explaining about the tripwire idea. It's almost like you put your gym clothes and everything out, so you have no excuse but workout, right? So you're putting things on the calendar. So you're like, hey, I better prepare, or I'm going to end up paying $1,000 for this guy who's asking for the data. I haven't pulled it all together.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And if you can mix in a commitment to like a coworker or a friend with that too, like this is a fun one. Like me and my co-founder have a little competition between the two of us as to who can get the most media hits, like mentions in Fox News or a mention in the Wall Street Journal or something. And so as a hobby, we'll pitch the media. And so the loser has to take the other one out to like wherever they want to eat dinner. Like it could be a $500 dinner. And so I'm looking forward to winning that. And so that's just a neat little thing, because we know we need media coverage. We know we need to be mentioned in USA Today, And so like a little competition amongst coworkers and friends is a nice little tripwire that works for us too.
Awesome. Well, I can sit here and talk to you, Bryan, for hours, but I certainly want to make sure that I value your time and kind of wrap this call up. But quickly, I would ask if you had, like obviously you've been through a lot of life experiences, built all these things. Knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Yeah, it would probably be something around like in 5 years, you are going to arrive. The only question is where and what does it look like? And the business is your vehicle, can be your vehicle to dictate what that is, what that looks like, where it is, and that reality, that the business is the vehicle. And at times you're going to be really frustrated with it and pissed off with it, but you really are at all times like laying in the answer. Like it always is like you're laying in the data. Like the answer is always around you. And usually it always lies within like, every time I've ever been stuck in business and I didn't know what to do, I pick up the phone and talk to 10 customers. Some way got an answer as to what it is I need to focus on. And so the answer is always around you. You're laying in it. And even though you might be pissed off and frustrated with the state of your business, it is the vehicle for what the reality is going to look like 5 years from now.
A great insight to end our conversation together. Thank you, Bryan, for sharing this time with me and our audience and sharing your life lessons and wisdom.
Well, thanks, Sam. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by OneIMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.